Before we get into the treatment, if you could a little bit more in detail on the consequences of untreated ARFID. Oh, he's going to grow out of it. She's going to grow out of it. Or she's just being stubborn. She needs to do this. And it goes years because I see this with SM, right? She's just shy. You need to do this. You should do this. And that only reinforces avoidance and anxiety.
The biggest consequence is the medical consequence. A lot of people who struggle with ARFID come into my office because they're having nutritional issues or medical issues related to the eating. And that's the major thing that they want to address. And I think there is this idea of somebody with ARFID as being underweight because they're not eating enough. But often a lot of the people that I'm working with are overweight because the foods that they're
Interesting.
comfortable with, and this is cross-cultural as well, the foods that they're comfortable with tend to be higher fat, higher calorie, more in like the junk food domain. And so if somebody's only living on chicken nuggets, which I will say, like across the board, the thing people seem to come in only eating is chicken nuggets, but only chicken nuggets from their specific place, not
Oh,
chicken nuggets from anywhere else. And it has to be cooked a certain way and prepared by a certain person. So that's where we start to get into some of the rules that come with
yeah.
our food. But the biggest consequence is they're just not necessarily eating foods that are benefiting them nutritionally. And so especially with adults, I start to see people who've struggled with this their whole life and now they have low bone density because they didn't get enough calcium growing up or they didn't get enough dairy growing up. And maybe they have high cholesterol or they're pre-diabetic or diabetic because a lot of the foods that they're eating are not necessarily they're high calorie and so they're overweight. And so we're looking at what are the medical consequences of not being able to have a nutritional variety in their diet. That's one of the biggest consequences. And especially with kids, what you'll see is a failure to make expected developmental gains. So either growth or weight gains, or they're spiking on certain nutritional issues in terms of like lab work. And that's where I really like to collaborate with a physician that can assess and tell me what is this child's medical need. Do they need to gain weight? Do they need to lose weight? How quickly? Is that going to be healthy? How would you recommend going about that? How many calories a day do you think they need? So that I'm collaborating with people who can give me the input on what this child really needs. And then I can help them work through the emotional issues of that. And same with teens and adults. But also I'd like to work with a dietitian or a nutritionist that can help me inform the specific needs that somebody has. So then we're taking the meal plan and we're working through challenges that incorporate those things that are going to give them the best health picture. The other major consequence that tends to show up is the social consequence, which is a fear of engaging in different situations where they might not be able to eat, or they might not be able to find the food that they're comfortable with, or that people might notice that they're struggling and then they'll think they're weird or they'll judge them. And it can get really, really hard. And so that's when I usually start to see kids getting buy-in for treatment. Usually when it's younger kids, it's parents that are like, something has to change. Whereas a kid would love to eat chicken nuggets all day and doesn't see a problem with that particular issue. But when they start to get older and they realize, I can't go to sleepovers, I can't go to birthday parties and eat the cake, and everybody's going to notice I'm not eating the cake. And it's really stressful for me to try to eat the cake. And then they're going to see that I'm struggling and I'm crying, and that's embarrassing. That's a major consequence. And with adults, I really see that on people not being able to go on dates and they really want to date. And so that social piece is usually another major consequence.
Yeah, that's all super interesting. A large percentage of individuals with selective mutism have social anxiety. I don't necessarily see ARFID as part of that because sometimes they have, the inability, they have difficulty eating in front of others from their social anxiety. But when they are in a comfortable environment, like at home or even a comfortable restaurant, they don't have difficulties. So I definitely think it's important for our listeners to understand that maybe what differentiates it is not so much the social anxiety, but the sensory aspect here. Because I do know that kids, that are individuals, not just kids, with selective mutism and the social anxiety and the sensory all come together. But it's the sensory piece that I see the most in my
Yeah.
practice for sure. So this is just really interesting because of that social, aspect, the consequences that you're talking about. I could see that even being more of an issue for our socially anxious kids and teens and adults. The more
Yeah.
socially anxious, the more they're going to be so aware of all of this. So that probably just makes it even bigger of an issue.
Yeah, it starts to have a real ripple effect. And usually those are the moments when people start to say, okay, I'd like to work through this. I don't want to deal with things that are disgusting, but I want to be able to live a full life. And this is getting in the way of being able to travel and go out and go to camp and go to parties and all that stuff.